Hi guys, Graham from Epson here again. Hope you're doing alright. Welcome back to my How Easy Is It series. This series is aimed at showing you how easy it is to use and configure Epson Colourworks series label printers to perform everyday routine label printing tasks. In the first two episodes we learned how to set up and configure an Epson C600 series label printer. In this episode we move on to something a little more complex. How easy is it to configure and print a full bleed or borderless label? Most people printing labels need to be able to print labels that don't have any white space around the outside of the label. That would look ugly and not professional. There are a few tips and tricks we can use to achieve this on a Colourworks printer. So keep watching and hopefully you'll learn something today. And at the end I'll talk to you about what to expect in our next episode. Thank you very much for now, and I'll see you later. Bye.
We begin in our label design environment. The first step is to check that we have the correct media selected in our printer driver. Here we are using a 4" by 6" label, 101.6 by 152.4mm in size. We must also check that the label environment itself is set to the same size as the media from the driver. We must also zero the margins to make sure we are using the full label design area. To start with, we need to add an image to our label design. I'm going to intentionally select a fairly dark label design for this demo. The idea being that later on when we come to search for any white exposed edges on the label, they will be more obvious. So I'm choosing this coffee label design. Roughly position the image and then make sure that it is centered on the design area by zeroing your X and Y position coordinates. We will also change the size of the artwork so that it perfectly matches the width and height of the label design area. In this case 101.6mm wide and 152.4mm high. Lastly, we need to simply print this label. We need to know how the label prints with no adjustments in order to understand what adjustments we need to make to achieve a borderless label. You will notice how when printing this label, the bottom edge of the label comes out of the printer first. Not all label software prints the label in the same orientation. It's important to understand and note what orientation your label software prints the labels in for when you are adjusting values later on. So let's look at how our label printed. I've placed the label, including its backing paper, on a dark background. You can see along the bottom there is a thin white line visible at the bottom of the label area. There's also a very thin white line visible at the left-hand side of the label and also at the right. However, at the top of the label, the print has actually bled over onto the backing paper, so there is some ink visible on the backing, maybe a millimetre or so. Here I've removed the label from its backing paper so that it's easier to see the white lines at the edges, across the bottom, the right hand side and the left hand side, but as you can see there's no white line at the top. Let's move our printed image down on the label slightly to eradicate the lower white area. On the printer control panel, locate the print position adjustment as shown. Go into the top position adjustment As you can see, you can enter a negative or positive value to adjust the print position up or down on the design area. I'm going to enter a negative 1mm adjustment to move the print area down. Print the label again to see what effect this has. Remember, we had some overbleed at the top of the label design, so we should be able to move the design down and cover up the white space at the bottom. Here's our adjusted label. As you can see, having moved the design down 1mm, there is now no white space at the bottom of the label. There is also no white space at the top, since we had sufficient overbleed to make the necessary adjustments. We do still have white space at the left and right edges. We have not adjusted those yet. To correct the issue of the white space at the left and right of the label will require a little more work than last time. We need to edit the media width within the printer driver. This is to fool the printer into thinking that the label media is slightly wider than it really is. Here you can see we are going to edit the label width to be 1mm wider than the label actually is, so 102.6mm. Make sure you save the adjustment to the media definition. Next, we need to adjust the page size within the label design software to match the newly increased width of the media definition. Here I'm going into the paper section and updating the label software's view of the media definition from the driver. You can see when I reselect it, it picks up the new width of 102.6mm. Now we need to change the width of the label design area to match the new width of the media definition. Here I update the width to 102.6mm. The margin on the preview on the right will change. Click OK. Lastly, we need to update the size of our label artwork so that it fills the newly created 1mm of white space on the right hand side of the label. So I will update the width of the artwork to match the 102.6mm. You can see now that there is no white space shown on the design area. You can now print the label again and we'll see what changes have occurred. When you increase the width of a label, it increases it from left to right, so the right margin will move out slightly. Let's look at the newly printed label. You can see now that the white space on the right has been eradicated. However, the slight white space on the left remains. We can correct this using the printer's front panel, like last time. With our newly increased label width, we can move the whole print area slightly to the left to cover up the left-hand white space. Again, enter the print position adjustment menu on the printer, but this time choose left position. You can only adjust left or right by -1.5 to +1.5mm. I'm going to move the label to the left by 0.5 mm, a positive value here, as I think that's all that's necessary to cover up that tiny white space. Let's print the label again and see what happens. Hopefully this should be the last adjustment we need to make, but you may need to fine-tune your adjustments to get things perfect. So here's our finished label. You can see that we've eradicated the white space on the left and on the right, also at the top and at the bottom. We now have a perfect borderless, fully bled label ready for use and mass production.
Okay guys, so that's how easy it is to print borderless or full bleed labels on an Epson CoWorks label printer. Pretty easy, wasn't it? In our next episode, we'll move on to an even more demanding subject, that is spot colour matching. Do you need to get precise colours from your C6000 or general ColorWorks label printer? Many of the topics we'll cover in the next video will show you exactly how to do this. You'll be able to match brand colours quite easily and learn how straightforward it is to do so. So until next time, bye from me and thanks for watching. Take care.